16th, 2019. Please turn your cell phones to silent at this time if you would. At this time, I would like to ask all of you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please do roll call?
Colwell.
Here.
Mr. Lilly is here. Mr. Roman.
Here.
Scott Ruggles.
Here.
Liz Smith.
Here.
Mike Powell.
Here.
Andrea Voorhees.
Present.
Very good. Looking for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor, there is one addition that is on the board table, the new list of bills dated 7/16/19. If that's all anybody has, so make a motion to approve the agenda.
With new bills, and we have a presentation for the fire department this evening. So I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Under a question, if I have a question on the invoice, the new invoices.
No. No, just flat out no. Because it's going to be in the consent
Should we
agenda.
not add it to the consent agenda so that I can ask the question?
You're going to ask a question anyways. We can take it out later. We can ask after the fact.
Okay.
Okay. After the fact.
Although then it'll be approved.
Yes, it will be, regardless. Got to pay it.
And I'm okay with that. It's just a question of where the money's going to be coming from.
We'll figure that out.
All right. I'll hold you to that.
All right. No problem. I'm sure you will. Thank you. Okay. With that being said, I have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Item number 5, public comment. Anyone at this time, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. You'll have to identify yourself for the recorder, and we'll be happy to hear what you have to say. If you can go to the microphone, it would be easier. Or do you have the portable mic? Okay. Whichever way you like, dear.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tony Meisel and I live on Pinecrest Drive. I was here last month explaining of the problems that myself and my neighbors are having with our septic systems. We've been working with the township for almost a year to provide relief through extending the main sewer line from Bogey Lake Road down into our subdivision. I explained that we had requested Pinecrest Drive and Pinecrest Court. When we received the paperwork in April, the township had increased the scope of the project to include 2 parcels, one of which 45 acres and one 70 acres, as well as the entire Bogey Lake lakefront. Last month, I had requested emergency relief from the board and was told to call and make an appointment to discuss the problem again. That was on June 18th. Since then, we have heard about 2 additional subdivisions requesting sewers who have had the same problems with the township. The township extends the scope to make the success of extending the main impossible. I am not the only resident having these issues. On June 21st, Rick Derry received a call from Aaron Potter indicating the township was going back to the original request of Pinecrest Drive and Pinecrest Court and somehow Burrell Drive. We should receive the paperwork by June 24th to be able to go to the residents to obtain the signatures approving the project. As of June 28th, we did not receive any paperwork, and therefore Rick Derry placed calls again to Rick Howell and Aaron Potter. Aaron Potter returned his call and said that we should have the paperwork next week, but it could extend to the following week due to the July 4th holiday. It's well past that, and we still haven't received the paperwork. Yesterday, Rick Derry received a copy of an email to Keith, who must own the 70 acres in the township's revised scope of work. We really don't know who this is or why the copy of the email was received. I've been trying to work through Rick Derry, our association president. However, I can't seem to get any information for whatever reason. Unless you have lived through this problem of not flushing your toilet every time it's used, not to shower every day, or even though you have a laundry room with a new washer, you don't use it because of the septic system. Again, unless you've lived through this problem, you don't know what I'm going through. I should not have to pay $50,000 to install an engineered septic, especially since the SAD has been started and we know we have over 65% approval on our street alone. My frustration is that we have been made promises that are not kept. Just since the last board meeting, we were promised the proper paperwork for our original request, promised a week later that it might be another week or 10 days. We still haven't received it, and then yesterday, a last-ditch effort to make us think that they are going to work on our project, an email that doesn't make any sense to us. I understand this is a time-consuming project that has many steps that we don't even see. However, we are made promises that are not kept. 1 week, 2 weeks, oh, there's a holiday. When does it end? When do we get the truth? We've been ready for the next step for months. Where's the paperwork so we can get signatures? I also understand that this is public comment portion of the board meeting. However, we cannot get any answers from the township officials. I have lived all my life between Commerce, Highland, and White Lake Townships, and I'd always felt that the officials cared about the residents. Please care. Again, what can the board do tonight to get an emergency sewer main approved?
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Nothing?
This is public comment. Again, if you'd like to come in, make an appointment, come in, sit down, we can have some further discussion. We are working on it. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Doug Klein. I live on Cedar Island, right by Mr. Ron's Market. I was wondering what is the status going on with the market? If it's going to be knocked down, refurbished, what? It's been an eyesore for about 7 years, and the drugs and everything that's being sold in the parking lots and the vandalism and things like that, I think we've had enough. So is there anything that you guys know what's going on?
All I can tell you is it's gone through the public hearing process, and it's in the process right now. The planning department and the building department could answer all those questions in detail.
Okay,
All right?
thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Well, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'll
Hey.
for you.
I was not sure what the process here is.
Your name first.
Oh, Mike Kitchen. I live here in White Lake, obviously, on Pontiac Lake Road, which I believe many of you have probably heard of, on the gravel portion. My first meeting with them was last night, so I am learning. I've been given an email, apparently most of you have gotten. They asked me to come and asked to be on the agenda for next month. I don't know if that's the process, but we definitely are not getting straight answers from what I understand. So basically I'm here to find out what the path is to get changes made. Not necessarily paved. Three-way stops have been mentioned. Something to stop all the accidents. Something to slow down the dust that literally sandblasts the front of my home. My child has allergies. I'm sure that has a factor to do with it. What's the proper step? If not in front of the township, what's the proper step?
First of all, the county is the one responsible for the road, okay? But if you'd like to come in and talk to me about it, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation.
Okay, because I understand you have, and then the county tells them to come to
The county is the
the
one
other
that-
people
the
come
county
talk to you.
The county controls it. It's not up to us.
Okay.
That is farthest thing from the truth.
Okay.
Please come in and see us.
All right.
I would appreciate it if you would, okay? Okay. Yes, sir.
I'll stand over here, and I don't think I need a mic.
Okay.
I've been told that before. My name is Bill Sinzheimer.
The online audience, please.
My name is Bill Sinzheimer. I'm president of the Homeowner Association for Aspen Meadows, and I'm here tonight to ask basically a rhetorical question. Who does the building department and the code enforcement people work for? Do they work for White Lake? And doesn't White Lake represent us, the homeowners and the taxpayers? Okay. Then I guess I'm here to say, why aren't they doing something about our subdivision who has new building going on? And I've got some pictures. If there's two of them, you can just sort of look and pass around.
Thank you.
And I've talked to Aaron, I've talked to Brent, I've talked to Jason, so I don't know if Aaron or Jason is water and enforcement, but either way. And I'm telling them about the dumping on these empty lots of trash, debris, leftover building material.
everything. The answer I got back from either Aaron or Jason was, oh, that's a construction site. That's construction material. If you look at those pictures, that's not construction material. That's the dump site of debris. In the one picture you'll see there to the left of the dumpster are rafters, trusses that were not used in lot 84. I called the police and had them moved. They had them in the street, across the street, in the street. They moved them over to 83 lot. They've been there since last Thanksgiving. I asked the builder what he was going to do, and he said, oh, I'm going to use them in a future house. Well, what truss would you want to be used in your house that's been laying outside for 11 months? That's another issue. I'm not going to stand here and argue about the builders and what they do. My point is, we pay the taxes. We are in White Lake. White Lake doesn't do anything to help us. We're in between. Well, that's county. If it's a water sewer drainage problem, that's not something we can handle, because in our code, that's considered construction. I invite every one of you to come drive up there, drive around, and you tell me all that debris, junk, and one of those pictures shows a dumpster, and just to the right of it is a pile of old drywall and all the material to do drywalling. It's been there about 4 months. So my question is, what does code enforcement do? What does the building department do? Because you guys hold the hammer to the developer and the builders. You issue building permits. You are not holding them accountable. And we're in the middle. I write them letters. Now we've written a letter to the developer saying that we are going to start fining him for not cutting the weeds, putting the sprinklers in like they're supposed to. All those things, we can fine them. But this type of stuff is past us. They just say, yeah, okay, and then nothing ever happens. And then I don't get any help from Township to rectify it.
Okay, I'd like you to give me a call and come in and see me, okay, if you would, okay?
Okay, will do.
I appreciate it. Okay, moving along, we're gonna get in the consent agenda here, and then we're gonna go to our presentation, so just bear with us one moment, folks. Any questions on the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to second that motion myself. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item is going to be something that's kind of cool. I don't get to do this very often. At this moment in time, I would like Jim Kraft and Jason Green, please come forward. Gentlemen, it's with distinguished honor that I am able to be part of this. You have many years involved in the service. Captain Jim Kraft, well, soon to be Captain Jim Kraft, excuse me, Lieutenant Jim Kraft, was hired full-time November 20th of 1989. The experience in the Air Force has helped him to be an asset to our community. During Jim's 30 years, wow, with White Lake Fire Department, he has committed considerable energy to improve the department. He works well under pressure and is highly respected by members of the department. Jim has 2 daughters, a son, and grandchildren, and all can be very proud of his service and dedication and support. Jason was hired full-time October 1st, 2005. His experience as a volunteer firefighter at Waterford Fire Department has helped him be an asset to White Lake Township. I heard that his first home, for the most part, is in the woods. The second home is White Lake. He's a great outdoorsman. During his 14 years working for White Lake Fire Department, Jason consistently demonstrates his enthusiastic qualities of providing quality service to residents. He's willing to go the extra mile. So many of our firemen are willing to do this. So it is a very, very honorable and proud moment for me to be a part of this again. Your family can be very, very proud of your service, dedication, and accomplishments. Both Jim and Jason are deserving of their promotion from lieutenant to the rank of captain. At this time, I would like the family members who would like to pin these shiny little pieces of medallions here, which are proud to be placed. Oh, that's good. All right. Let me get it open here. We need a bigger hall. Stick 'em. This one goes over here. All right. And if you guys want to get up here and get some pictures, why don't you come a little closer and get a better picture.
Chelsea, you can bring your phone.
Stand over here, and I'm just going to stand over here. You guys kind of do your thing. Yeah, as long as it's hanging there, you're good. Complicated.
Up there.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you. Around the front.
They won't go do that.
Congratulations.
Well deserved.
Well deserved.
Watch the course, Captain.
You guys might need a medic if
That's all these cords here.
you pull the thing down. You're gonna need a medic because Sean's gonna be.
Please do.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 7, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 18th, 2019. Any comments from the board at this time? Mr. Roman,
I'll make a motion to approve the board minutes of June 18th, 2019.
motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, thank you. Okay. 8A, public hearing with resolution. This is a hearing to establish the special assessment district for the Meadow Lane road maintenance. With that, we are going to make a motion to open public hearing. Roll call vote.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, the public comment, public hearing, I should say, session for the special assessment district for Meadow Lane Road maintenance is open. Anyone that would like to state anything regarding this matter this time shall do so now. No one being identified, I'd like to make a motion to close public comment.
I'll support that.
A motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. Item 8B, the resolution 19-024, determining to undertake a road maintenance project and to establish and maintain a special assessment district for Meadow Lane. Janine, do you have anything to add to this?
Just one thing, there's a small correction
Okay?
on the second page. We correct the date. The term, number 6, the term of special assessment shows the 5 years and end at December 31. I think here says 20.
You need to speak up just a little bit.
Sorry. The number 6 needs to be corrected to say December 31, 2023. Right now it says 2018.
Oh, 2023. Okay, correction. Duly noted. 2023.
Yep.
Counselor, any comment on that? You good? Okay. All right. This time, any questions from the board? This is a renewal, more or less, of something that's been going on for some time.
They
So I
just
think,
use money to fix their road.
right, pretty well established this.
Got a question.
Mr. Roman.
One more resolution then still next month
Yep.
for the
To confirm
role
the
itself.
yeah.
Okay.
Established the
Thank
role
you.
itself. Thank you. You were correct on that, by the way, Michael. Okay. We get
Blind
going back
squirrel
and forth.
finds a
I know,
nut
I
once in a
know.
while.
It's all right. We're both trying to figure this out. Yes, Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 19024 and set a second hearing date for 8/20/19.
8/20/19, second hearing date. I have a motion. Looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Andy Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. 9A. This is Resolution 1926, intention to establish a special assessment district to be known as an emergency sewer hookup 2019-02. We don't necessarily have a public hearing at this time, but I would take public comment on this or question if there is. Seeing none, moving on. Okay. That being said, this is what we've done in the past for emergency sewer hookups. How many parcels?
Just two this time.
Just two this time? Okay. And this again will go to second reading on,
Well, it'll come back in
August
August
20th with the
20th.
public hearing,
Yeah, yeah.
similar to what's on the agenda
Yeah,
for the private road.
That's gonna, when the hearing will come. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Okay, looking for a motion to move forward. Mr. Roman.
Make a motion to approve the intent resolution 19-026.
I have a motion, looking for support. I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. 10, old business, second reading of the rental property ordinance. We brought it before our board last month for the first. The second would lead to the adoption. Understand the board that this is not for immediate implementation, and it will be, our policies will be reviewed closely by the attorney as we slowly implement this, but this does get this part under our belt. We spent a tremendous amount of time and energy, and John, my hat goes off to you, you and Sherry in the building department have done a great job at this, and I think she's redid that thing so many times. At some point, it was like we must have killed a few trees, but I think we're heading in the right direction. So, any comments from the board?
Just to clarify, we gave you a red line copy, and the red lines show the difference from first reading, from when you approved it. We talked about there were gonna be some changes. So the redlining in here are those changes. So if you agree with these red lines, or if you have any questions, John and I are here and prepared to answer any questions. Otherwise, it's ready to move forward.
Yes, Mr.
Make a
Wolf.
motion to approve the rental property ordinance with revisions.
I have a motion. Look for support. Support. I have support by Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Second reading of ordinance to amend Chapter 38, Article 2, Section 38-245 of the Water Systems Code of Ordinances. We went into great length and detail on this at our last meeting, and I think we all have an understanding of what its intentions are, and I would like to see this move to adoption. Yes, Counselor?
Just another clarification, the redlining you see in here was the redlining from first reading. There aren't any changes that are being proposed between first reading and second reading. We just haven't we haven't taken off the redlining.
Correct.
Purple lining.
It's red on mine.
Mine's purple.
Yours is purple? Okay.
Mine's purple.
Mr. Powell.
I wanted to compliment Mr. Potter on reaching out to me. He and I went over it at length yesterday, and I want to appreciate the input that he had on this ordinance form with me. And I really like the changes, and I'm in favor of this ordinance.
Very good. With that, I'll take that as a motion.
I move approval of the cross-connection ordinance. What's it actually called here?
That's the ordinance to amend Chapter 38, Article 2, Section 38.
That, I just,
45.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Move on to be adopted. I have a motion, looking for support. I have support from Mrs. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. New business, first reading to ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Article 2 of the Fire Code. John,
Yes.
I'm going to let you kind of take the lead.
Sure. We have some amendments here. Probably the biggest thing that I wanted to change is try to get the outside storage under control here. If you drive by some of our bigger box stores, some of our, even some of the smaller stores, the fire code is very vague when it comes to outdoor storage. It gives you some height limitations, but it really doesn't address concerns that should be there. And it was really getting confusing for my inspectors. They would go out and inspect and they're like, what are we really enforcing here? How do you want me to enforce this? So I want to take away the uncertainty, put this into place, so if they have a hard line to go by when they do inspections, and it's a lot easier to deal with the business owner when we're very consistent across the board. And Mr. Paul, I know you're gonna have you talked with me yesterday, you still have a question on the storage piles, any material that shall not exceed 4,000 cubic feet in volume. The concern there, Mr. Powell reached out to me last night, the concern there is that it would be non-combustible material, maybe like a gravel pit, or somebody delivering gravel. The volume may have to be a lot larger. I would have no problem putting an exception with wording something like, this volume shall not apply to sand, gravel, or similar material.
Or non-combustibles?
What is it that you're trying to prohibit with storage piles?
I want manageable piles. So if we do have a problem there, they can get so big, they're not manageable. There's no way our guys can get in there and manage them. And that's what I want to do.
So your suggested exceptions are things that
Can't burn.
which wouldn't then be a problem for the fire department.
Right.
But doesn't planning have issue with outdoor storage as it is? Are the zoning ordinance
commercially.
addresses it?
Commercially, but
And
yeah.
that's what he's talking about commercially. So wouldn't that be covered already in the zoning ordinance, or do you know?
Perhaps, but I mean, his I mean,
Lisa, I'll tell you, it's harder for me. I don't really know the zoning ordinance. It's hard for me to enforce an ordinance that I'm not that familiar with. And putting it in the fire code makes it easier. We're out there certainly a lot more than people from the planning department.
we have issues with it for different reasons. We're concerned about it from a blight standpoint. He's concerned about it from, I mean, he's enforcing the fire code. We're enforcing the zoning ordinance, and there's no carryover. So, personally, and John and I have talked a little bit about this. I think it's fine that they both deal with the same issue. I mean, he can write appearance tickets and things like that.
One of the issues from my standpoint was, it says storage piles of any material. It doesn't specify what use, which building, and certainly the zoning ordinance covers stockpiling of materials. However, 4,000 cubic feet of material in a mine is a little tiny little pile. It's just 3 trucks full of material. And so,
Would a mine have had to have gotten any sort of site plan approval, which would dictate
Well,
the
no,
maximum size?
this could even be materials dumped on a job site.
Yeah.
That are left for a period of time. I think the point is that it's
Combustible.
the concern of combustible
Absolutely.
materials. And I do agree with Mike that I think if we, just storage piles of any combustible material should not exceed 4,000
Yeah.
cubic feet in volume. I
That's
think
also-
that would
Yeah, I have no issue with that, yeah.
meet the intent of what
Sure.
you're trying to do. Okay, all right, well, that solves that, okay. And then,
Two of the big changes
Yep.
here, or two of the additions, were section 1107. We added these. These are requirements for residential fire suppression. And I think it's just some of the stuff we've been faced with, some of the unique situations. We have houses now that are going up on islands. We do not have accessibility to them. And what we're looking at, remember, we're looking at community risk reduction. So putting fire suppression in there, it's not so much as property conservation, it's more of, it's a life safety feature in that building, so people, it'll keep the fire at bay so they can get out, because we're not gonna get there in a timely fashion. I wanna be very realistic with that. And I had to make some amendments because the fire code only addresses certain aspects of the residential code. So I had to be a little creative, and I had to add that portion to it in the fire code. And I think
it was pretty easy with new residential development, how we would do this. The more challenging one was more how we deal with existing. And coming up with a threshold, it just wasn't an easy thing to do. So I really took a look at this today, spent some time on it, looked at it, and with, make sure I'm giving the board the right one. So under 1107, we'll talk about A and B, where we're talking about existing structures. So I had to come up with a threshold, and I think most of the existing structures on Gallon, I think everything's probably 1,000 square feet or maybe under. And I looked at it, in White Lake Township now, you can't build a ranch house unless it's at least 1,000 square feet. So that's the cutoff right there. You can't build anything residential smaller. And I spoke with Sean about that today. And then so we had to look at what's the cubic volume that we're willing to do. And to me, I'm trying to be, and trust me, I'm trying not to put an undue cost on a resident, but I certainly want to make sure it's safe. So the way I looked at it is, if you're going to add the existing cubic content of 1,000 square feet or more to any building or structure, I think that would be a good threshold, which would be 12,000 cubic feet. That would be a pretty good threshold, I think. That's just almost doubling the size of the existing structure. They would put a suppression system in.
That may be a little too large.
Yeah,
That's
Okay,
I'm thinking
you know what, and Mike, I was anticipating you
Yeah.
saying that might be, that's still too small, so I
No,
was
that's a
trying to.
little, I think that's a large.
Yeah.
When you and I talked, I just wanted, the way it's written right now, when an addition increases the existing cubic content, period, increases it, whether it's an overhang for a closet or whether it's overhang for a fireplace or something like that, that triggers this. Quite frankly, 1,000 cubic feet would be plenty, in my opinion. So just even a 2-foot by 6-foot closet or something. Let's say somebody wanted to move a living room wall out a foot just to expand something. To prevent them from, might prevent them from doing that if they have to now go in and replumb their entire house and put fire suppression in it. So I think 1,000 square feet, I think that's way too high, quite frankly, too high of a threshold.
Cubic feet.
Cubic feet, I think, would be much more reasonable.
Yeah.
I like your intent,
Yeah.
and that threshold issue is the only question.
And I know this is a kind of a difficult thing, but if you were to take, a 10 by 10 room, which is 100 square feet times 8, that's 800 cubic feet.
Yeah.
So
That's a bedroom now.
that's a bedroom. And my thought is, if you're going to add a bedroom onto one of these facilities, and the whole idea is life-saving.
Yeah. So why don't we drop it to 500 cubic feet, get it
I would
underneath
agree.
a bedroom size?
Yeah, 500 cubic feet.
Yeah.
I think that would be a reasonable place for us to start.
Yeah.
And I think it will more than meet the intent. And I'm satisfied with that. I think that would allow people still to do some little projects, but if anybody's decide they're gonna add on to a new major lifestyle, convert it from a cottage to a home, then they're gonna have to bring it up because of the fact that it is isolated and we just may not be able to get there. We won't be able to get
We
there.
won't be able to, it'll take a lot of time, so.
Yeah, I concur with.
And that's an easy adjustment for second reading. I would hope the board would let us move to second reading with this, because I can make these adjustments.
Okay.
These are just for homes not accessible
Yes,
to fire apparatus.
yeah, if you
For
read,
example, on an island.
well, it
Gotcha.
could be an island, it could be somebody builds a mile off the road and
Yeah.
gates it, where we can't get in there. I mean, it might not just be an island.
Okay.
Counselor?
Mike, you raise a good point about the storage piles, and it got me thinking, unfortunately.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
Well, aren't there site plans that are approved that might be inconsistent with this? Should those be accepted out? Right, Sean, like
Give me a scenario.
Lowe's has outdoor storage,
Mm-hmm.
and if they have a site plan that authorizes certain storage that's inconsistent with this, they'd be in violation of the fire code, but consistent with their site plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's existing, though. I think that,
Fire code applies. There's no grandfathering in the fire code.
Was this intended for residential properties?
I'm,
for both.
Both.
wait, you're pointing at 1107.
The first
Section
half.
1107.
Outdoor storage is what we're
That's
on
commercial.
now.
Storage plan now, right?
That's what I'm talking
Yes.
about, the outdoor storage.
Right.
Is this line item intended for residential?
No.
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 It could be a pile of cardboard boxes, could be a pile of pallets.
And
These are combustible things that my biggest concern is, I believe that's the
Well, I
same.
think
When I looked, I come up with 4,000 cubic feet. If you take, I was using sheets of OSB. OSB as an example. So if you had, you know, they're 8 feet, and so if you have them stacked in twos and then 6 sheets wide, that's rounded off. That's about 4,000 cubic feet, 10 feet high. That's a lot of material, and it wouldn't. The whole intent is not to stop a store like Lowe's from storing. It's to manage their outdoor stores. This is all about management. It's not to
yeah,
exclude it.
And I don't disagree it's necessary, but don't you participate as the fire department in site plan approvals?
I do, but I don't. But one thing we don't get involved in is because they would go through the planning department if they want outdoor storage, which Lowe's and Home Depot, they were not approved for outdoor storage.
And quite frankly, there's no way in the world a store owner can tell you what they're gonna, this little area is now for cardboard, this little area is for wood, this little area is for concrete blocks. I mean, that's getting way too detailed.
So maybe just accepting then, unless authorized under site plan approval.
That's all right.
Sean, what are your thoughts
I
about that?
think that's reasonable because John does have his say in that process. And you know, there's two different kinds of outdoor storage. There's the outdoor storage in a garden center that's associated with almost every site plan of the stores that you've mentioned, and it's a defined area, and there are safety standards that are applied to that. Where we run into issues is the seasonal storage, and I think that's, John and I and Jason Hudson have talked a bit about this, where people are keeping sheds and you know, other things that are combustible in an area that wasn't intended to be used for storage, and I think that's kind of at the heart of some of this. So, but that's an issue that needs to be dealt with through the site plan process.
So then John and I can tweak that language if it's coming back for second reading along with the other two areas that you all discussed.
Let me ask, and maybe you guys can review this a little bit more. In a seasonal issue, let's just say you have, and maybe Scott will have some input on this. If you have a yard that's 100 feet by 100 feet and they store 10-foot high Christmas trees, are you now going to prevent Christmas tree sales because of the wide aisles? And are they going to have to divide that up into 4 square little areas in order to sell Christmas trees? That may impact that. That's just an example, a seasonal example. You might want to make sure that you don't cut down and require 2 acres to sell 1 acre of Christmas trees.
Yeah, and that's certainly not the intent of this. Yeah,
but you could see how that could be read in there.
I could. When I was looking at storage with storage piles, it would be stock piles of material that's stored. It's a stacking of pallets, a stacking of wood, a stacking of material.
I'm good with that as long as there's some explanation
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, Mike. Yeah.
I'm a little apprehensive to entertain a lot of this language. I mean, I feel like we get caught up in putting together a bunch of rules that then we're toiling with for years to come, you know, and then we have unforeseen consequences that, you know, are troublesome for business owners. So
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mr. Eagles, and that's not our intent. But my intent is management. I have to, because otherwise the fire code does allow me for things that are not accounted for. It gives me the authority to go in, and if there's nothing in that code or any code that we adopt by reference, then I can make a decision based on that. But then it's becomes so selective. I like it where it's like, you know what, you can store, but you can't have storage over 10 feet in height. And your storage has to be managed. This is all that's about. We're not here to jam up the business owner.
I understand that, but maybe that is the best way to have site-specific scenarios where, you know, it's your discretion rather than, you know, forcing somebody to be in violation because of, you know, he's not going along with having his, like Mr. Powell said, his storage piles 15 feet away from each other. So like at Home Depot, for instance, the buildings out front, the sheds they sell, they would now have to be 15 feet apart, right?
Yeah, and if you've been by there, I made them move the sheds, because that's not even a storage area, that's a loading area. Yeah.
I'm not familiar, but I mean,
Okay, yeah.
they're always there.
But that's
right?
the stuff we're faced with, yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to simplify this word. I don't want storage near the exits. And I don't want seasonal storage where they stockpile all this material out there and they're right up against the building. And we're trying to move them back. I'm trying to set thresholds here so that it's really, to me, it makes it easier for the business owner. Because one thing I do is I go out to the business owner, I give them a self-inspection check sheet. I'd like these businesses to police themselves. It makes it a lot easier for me than I'm all, because I don't have myself or a manpower that we're always be able to go to every store and for maintenance inspection. If they help me out, I educate them, it makes it a lot easier.
Scott, how about your mulch that you sell? Would that be in violation of this, you think?
I think that farm use is a little different than what we're talking about here. If I'm not
This wouldn't
mistaken.
apply to,
Is that right, Sean?
Commercial sale, it would probably get
From a
caught
zoning
here.
perspective, I don't think it would be, it would be different. I don't know about the fire code.
I think this needs a little work. I'm not super comfortable with it either. I'm all for safety, and I think you have the best of intentions with this, but I don't want to hinder business owners in White Lake either. So I think we need to work on this a little bit before we move forward.
We can move it to second reading.
Yeah, I'm
How-
okay moving it to
well,
second reading, but I'd like to
we'll
tweak
tweak
some
it
things in here.
before it comes out the other end there.
And just to make it easy, can anybody has any issues with it, can you email me and tell me kind of where your issue stands? It'd probably make it a lot easier for me to make some changes and adjustments to it.
And unless we were to go to Home Depot and say, okay, let's measure this pile, maybe what you could do is go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any other facility in the township that may be pushing the envelope, and find out if they are in agreements with it, or if they have anything that is in conflict with this ordinance now, and what we might do to amend it then. Because us going out there, I'm not sure it would help.
Lisa, what's your,
I mean, John is among, you and I can work on this. We've heard all the comments. We can come up with a better version that we can present next month for first reading, if you're okay with that.
For first reading?
Put it off a month, but that way we essentially rework it based on the comments we hear today. Are you okay with that, or do
Yeah.
okay, all
you
right,
and I will work on it? Well,
okay.
Yeah, and I'll email you my thoughts.
Make a motion to postpone.
So,
Motion, support, all in favor?
aye?
Aye.
I made the motion, Mike supported. We will postpone and support. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John, very much.
Okay, next item is the request to purchase replacement of a mechanical compression device, which I kind of knew what it was at first, but then I got real educated and found out what it was. So I understand well, Chief, why don't you give us a little bit education?
Well, what is a device that does mechanical CPR? That's the simplest explanation. Okay, so, in
Cutting right to the chase.
especially with our staffing issues and everything else, it just frees up a couple of hands to help treatment of patients. And I think a couple of weeks ago we had a successful save using one of the devices, but we're replacing them because one of them broke and it can't be repaired, which means the next one's going to break pretty soon. They're the same age, so they've reached their life expectancy, and it's a valuable piece of equipment for us to operate.
Okay, and you're comfortable with I see you received 2 quotes, one from Stryker and one from Zoll, and you have recommended that we go to the 2 Lucas 3 mechanical compression devices in the amount of $28,822 and some change?
That's correct. And
Ones you're comfortable with?
significant evaluation by our EMS zealots.
Okay.
So they looked
Say no
very
more.
well, and had them in. Both companies were in twice to give us demonstrations.
Mr. Lilly?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 2 Lucas 3 units from Stryker in the amount of not to exceed $29,000.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support from Mrs. Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. Next item, 11C, request to purchase, replace self-contained breathing apparatus. I understand that we have several of those that are many years old and need to be replaced.
Yeah, the life expectancy again is extended. These units we have today are 15 years old. They're a couple standards behind in what the requirements are through NIOSH and OSHA standards and NFPA standards. So what we've done an evaluation how many we realistically need. We've actually reduced the number that we need, so we're not replacing all existing models, but we have certainly enough to provide the appropriate coverage for our organization.
Okay, very good. And this is not the kind of thing you go out and shop around all over town. I imagine it's a pretty specialized product.
Each of the SCBA manufacturers has a representative in the state of Michigan, and they're the only authorized dealer.
Gotcha.
Our existing representative is MSA, and we're going with the same one, which transitions us to easier training, modification, and familiarity.
So staff will be familiar with what you're doing. Okay. And that's an approximate cost of $204,867. We did apply for a grant for some of this, did we, or did we not? At one point?
We got a grant for a few units for emergency air packs. The grant for the entire package was denied.
Okay. All right. Well, we tried. Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, what do you do with the old equipment? Since it's no longer reusable, do you environmentally get rid of it, or do you just compost it? Or dumpster it, whatever?
Well, the bottles, which will go back to a scrap yard or whatever it is, so they'll be tried to recycle whatever parts can be recycled. But, the bottles, once you get over 15 years, can't be reutilized, so they're going to have to be recycled to the appropriate facility.
They're just expired out.
Yeah.
Kind of like a propane tank.
Yeah. Does it make sense to reach out to maybe more rural fire departments and see whether or not they could use them when they don't have anything at all?
I think we
Once
have
they're
to
out of
get
standard,
Yeah.
Is that right?
You're running
Okay.
a low risk. If they don't work and they break, or the bottle fails, then
God forbid.
where'd you get it from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
I know where you're going, Mike, and it
Yep.
makes sense, but we live in a
Understand.
different world, so unfortunately.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Roman.
Chief, does the number or the size of our on-call force have anything to do with the number of SCBA units that you're buying?
It's sort of related, yes. I mean, you can only get so many people that are going to show up, so that's why the number is what it is. So if we had a major callback where we got all of our career people back and our routine number of paid on call, we'd still have enough units.
Do they usually leave, are they left on the trucks
Yes.
usually?
So at a fire, you might have 32 officers or firemen that need these all at the exact same time?
Potentially, depending on the
Okay.
size of the fire. And even finding right now that even outside the structure, even though you might be standing outside, depending on the wind direction, you're still subject to the toxins right now.
Okay.
So it could be even somebody on the outside required to wear an apparatus.
Case in point, when that home burnt about a year and a half ago out on the point on Oxbow Lake, the wind, it was really super, super cold, so the wind, it was doing really weird stuff, and the smoke was going down and going up and going down, and it was like pluming out, because I was at that fire. And I could see where if they were on the outside of the structure, they'd have to have this stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Lilly?
Motion.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of 32 SCBA's and spare cylinders, 46 face pieces and protective bags, 18 battery packs, and 3 station charges from Apollo Fire Equipment not to exceed $205,000.
Support.
Motion and support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Next item, 11D, is a new replacement fire command vehicle for the chief's use. The vehicle will replace a 2014 Ford Explorer with approximately 85,000 miles. I noticed you went to a local dealer. I also noticed that we have seen, as Chief Dan Keller pointed out to us, there was going to be a considerable increase in the Ford Explorers. And the new ones are considerably more money. So your selection is from M59 Zot, and that is a Jeep, correct? Okay. Any questions from the board?
I just want to say thank you for going local.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lilly.
For a lot of the prices that we get for purchase of vehicles, it does not make sense that we're driving around with vehicles that are 5 and 6 years old. So I'd be happy to make a motion to purchase a Jeep Cherokee from Zott Automotive in the amount of $26,449.
Or,
$499.
oh, sorry.
$499.
400.
26,499.
Cut him short 50 bucks, Terry.
I tried to save a few.
I'll
Trying to
throw-
crack
I'll throw
that
the
deal.
50 in.
Okay. Yeah, motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
I say it. Thank you. And again, thanks for shopping, Louisville. That's a good thing. The next item is from DPS, is to request to approve a replacement pump for the Myers Sanitary Lift Station. Not a whole lot of choices in that one.
No. So, we've been doing a lot of SAW grant assessments, storm asset management and wastewater grant. Part of that assessment process was to do condition assessments on the pump stations. And in that assessment process, we discovered that the pump 1 of the Myers station has basically kind of run its course. It's showing some symptoms of failure. So this pump has been taken out of service, and I'm asking the board to authorize Water Resource Commission to purchase the replacement pump and install it. The pump will be converted from a flight pump that's currently in there to an ABS pump, which will save us about $7,000 over the original pump cost. And I'd like to ask that the board approves this purchase not to exceed $30,000 based on the county's estimates.
Do you know how long that pump's been in there?
2003,
2003.
16,
So you got-
almost 17
You
years.
got 17 years out of God knows what.
It's a pretty good run for a
that's-
sewage pump.
Yeah, that's a pretty good run. Yeah. My sump pumps never last that long. So, okay, any questions?
Under statement, I really appreciate Mr. Potter, Director Potter, to find this. I guess the question is, why has the Oakland County DPS not been maintaining our system better, and we have to find this out under a different type of investigation process? And a little statement, a little commentary, and maybe maybe Oakland County can step up a little bit on their inspections. So,
Yeah, we found a few things that we found, I'll say, rather surprising
yes.
During the SAW grant process. So.
We have, and this isn't the first time this pump has been repaired. They have done quite a bit of what's considered minor maintenance. Unfortunately, our contract with Oakland County identifies the boundary and what is and what isn't minor maintenance versus major maintenance just by a cost. And so, I don't really want to defend the county, but, this pump is 16 years old. And so I don't have the entire maintenance history of this individual pump with me tonight. But I have seen plenty of work orders that we've worked on this same pump. I mean, it's probably been pulled 20 times for, deragging and things like that. In this assessment, we have also, I have a list with me tonight of all the other pump stations that we've done so far. And almost all of them exhibit wear and tear on pumps that would be considered above minor maintenance. So that we're looking at trying to get as much of this done under minor maintenance as we possibly can. I agree that it did strike me as odd, and it kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit that we just happened to be out there to do a SAW grant assessment versus a regular assessment. The SAW grant assessment is much more in-depth than what the county does on a routine maintenance visit to a site. So again, I don't really want to defend the county. I'm not going to speak for them, but we are doing a lot of work now with this, and it's good. The SAW grant's been great for the state of Michigan, and those lucky enough to have this grant. It's worked well for us and at least helped us identify where the faults were. I think we've all discussed where the faults were in our contract, in our operating agreements, but the county is kind of under that same hurdle, so to speak. They're trying to operate our system within the confines of this restrictive contract as well. And so it can kind of go both ways. That's a whole nother subject for another night.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Supervisor, I
Yes, sir.
move that we authorize the DPS to purchase an ABS pump to replace the Meyer Station pump number 1 using county contractors in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Okay. I have a motion, looking for support. Support from Mr. Ruggles, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, the next one's really kind of interesting. A request to approve Eganix, did I say that right?
Yeah, Eganix.
Eganix hydrogen sulfide reduction system installation for Meyer and Kroger sanitary stations. I found this to be very fascinating when I went over all this with Mr. Potter, and Mr. Lilly and myself are at times have become all too familiar with what the problem is driving down Elizabeth Lake Road. So, and this will help some residents in here. If you care to elaborate.
So, so the system does what it says it does. Hydrogen sulfide, for those in the audience that don't know, is a noxious odor. It's a corrosive gas that's caused by the degradation of sanitary sewage. Over the last couple of years, we've had a number of complaints along Elizabeth Lake Road, in and around Oxbow Lake Road, and a number of complaints basically all the way down Elizabeth Lake Road. So the sanitary system down Elizabeth Lake Road was built as the off-site Meyer sanitary extension. It's about 3 miles long, all pressure. In that system, along that route, there are 3 air release valve structures that let the buildup of gases in that system out. And as those gases build up in high points in the system, they can take away from the capacity of the system and cause a lot of problems operationally like that. So these structures let that gas out. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. However, if you happen to live or be around one of these when this happens, I don't want to get too gross with the description, but you can imagine what it smells like. So about 3 parts per million is the level that is perceptible to a person. We data logged the Kroger station wet well, the Myers wet well, and the manhole that we replaced last winter at a cost of $113,000 to the township because of hydrogen sulfide damage. That manhole is located right at the drop connection between the Myers offsite extension and the what we call phase 1, the gravity system. And we were able to log that data for a week, and you'll see that in your package. What that basically amounts to is we were getting levels up to about 4 parts per million in the station, in both of the stations, and up to 290 parts per million at the drop connection. So thinking about that 3 parts per million, that's the level of detection. You can see where the problem is coming from, and it's generating in the pipe. So we did some calculations, determined the dwell time to be about 27 hours from the Meyer station to the drop connection. And so in that 27 hours, that sewage is basically rotting in that pipe, releasing its hydrogen sulfide. Because there's no air in that pipe, that allows anaerobic bacteria to thrive there. And they create a bio slime around the outer edges of the pipe. And that bacteria will bring in portion of these molecules that contain H2S They use that as part of a nutrient, and then the byproduct is H2S. So this system, we've gone under minor maintenance with Oakland County, and we've replaced these street filters. There's carbon filters in those ARV structures. We've replaced them many times. They last about a week, and the odor complaints still come back. Mr. Supervisor and I were out on the site at the drop connection and inspected the manhole that we just put in is already exhibiting some signs of H2S corrosion. So, working with Oakland County to try to find a solution, all the normal solutions to this have not worked. We've even gone so far as to try to shut off one of the air release valves that's the closest to a home. It's about 15 feet from the lady's house, right on the corner of Oxbow Lake and Elizabeth Lake Road. And so there's enough H2S in that pipe that it actually started bubbling up in the neighbor's grinder station through all their check valves. So it's not something that we can just do nothing with. We're going to have to come up with a solution to address it. So Oakland County recommended Eganics, as they'd had some experience with other townships in the area that have used their system. And so we met with Eganics out at the site, came up with the data logging plan, and then they have submitted us a cost estimate. Part of this cost estimate is the materials to build the aeration equipment at the Kroger and Myers station, and then part of it is for how this works. Basically, it aerates the wet well of the station, and then also at the same time adds a time-released aerobic bacteria that does not produce H2S as a byproduct. The idea is we're going to kill off the anaerobic bacteria, replace it with a culture of aerobic bacteria. These numbers are for 1 year worth of that material, and then also we will, after this has been installed for a period that's yet to be determined, we will go back with another round of data logging and monitor the progress and make our adjustments with the dosage from there.
Very good. Yeah, it's rather interesting. It's kind of humorous in the sense, but I feel bad for people in the area.
Yeah, it is. You can. It is humorous.
It's the worst.
It's not humorous for the
worst
people that
case
live nearby.
of gas that you could
Yeah.
possibly imagine, and it covers an area.
Oh, sorry, Sean. I didn't see you over there. Okay, so this is Sean Egan with Eganics.
Okay, yeah.
But he has any technical questions?
Yeah, it's I think the whole technology behind it. What I looked at, I thought was very fascinating, and I think this is an interesting way to cure it. If you're further looking into the report, the Royal Oak used it. City
Royal Oak does use it.
So it does use it. They've had decent results.
They gave us raving reviews.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, any questions from the board members?
Just out of curiosity, so how many of these live good bacteria would you find in a cubic square inch? Do you have any idea? Millions. Billions in a little square inch. Okay.
So when you look at, I mean, Aaron did a pretty good job at explaining what's going on. But, you know, you really have...
Hang on just a second. We're on TV and you have to...
No problem.
Sean Egan, Oxford, Michigan. So, you know, you really have only a few ways of combating the H2S. A lot of the stuff that's out there is a lot more expensive, and it's actually just going to mask what you're going to be doing with it, because ultimately, you know, the food source for the anaerobic bugs that are causing the H2S, they'll go through and they'll eat all the oxygen, then they eat all the nitrogen, they go on and so forth. I submitted a little report to you guys to kind of, you know, explain that. Ultimately, they get down to having to eat just the sulfur, and then they, you know, reduce that to elemental sulfide and turn it into H2S. If you're using something like bioxide, this is like a calcium nitrate, you're actually just feeding them nitrate. So you're actually growing the biofilm inside your force main. You're growing more of that anaerobic bacteria that has the capability to produce H2S. So eventually you have to up the bioxide because you're growing it. You're growing the biofilm. So you just have to keep upping and upping and upping, and then your monthly bioxide dosing rate gets pretty high. I mean, I've seen communities this size, dosing several $100,000 a year, literally just flushing that down the pipe. And then if you turn off the switch, your H2S skyrockets immediately because you have the biofilm there to produce it, and you're not feeding it anymore. So this is really more of an environmental, standpoint of combating it, where you're actually reducing the food upstream because we're going to reduce all of the fats, oils, greases, carbohydrates, things like that. So we'll reduce it there, and then we will, inoculate those bugs before they hit the force main, and then drive up the dissolved oxygen, where you have another portion of anaerobic bugs that cannot sustain life if there's more than 0.3 parts per million of O2 in that force main or in that environment. It's the pressure on their cell walls. So we'll be taking care of those guys by driving up that dissolved oxygen. And really at the end of the day, when you're looking at H2S and, just for the sake of transparency and honesty, that first 3 to 4 months is going to be, something where we'll work closely with Aaron and his team and doing that otolog data, Aaron. We do it after 30 days, and then another 30 days, probably run another, just to make sure we're on the right trend. Because H2S, it ebbs and flows. It spikes at the down times, and it spikes at the high times sometimes. So if you could give me, and I told this to Aaron, if you could give me consistent wastewater all the time, all day, every day, I could give you a consistent, formula to cure the problem. But since wastewater is, ever-changing variables second to second, we monitor it very closely for that first, 3-4 months, and then we'll kind of start trying to trim the fat, so to speak, where we'll try to pull out as much of that treatment as we can, find a threshold to give you the lowest, operating cost moving forward as a township.
Kind of like inoculation. Get the lowest dose that does the job.
Exactly. Yep.
Sean,
Okay.
it's on a good point that these doses are basically calculated dosage. When this hasn't been, we'll optimize this through operation.
Okay. I find it very fascinating, and I feel very confident the fact that I know you've done your homework on this, and hopefully it'll give some folks some relief, and not to mention it could help alleviate some of our problem. So.
The H2S issue isn't going away. Like I said, we spent $113,000 relining and replacing manholes on Union Lake Road. We're now finding, through saw grant assessments again, upwards of 900 feet and 2 additional manholes that possibly need to be replaced on Shotwell. It's a similar situation. If this works here, I'd like to look at this elsewhere in the township.
This may be something that could be part of a long-term preventative maintenance program, I'll say semi-organically, to help alleviate this.
Correct.
So
It's a green technology.
you may be very onto something real good here, Aaron. I really appreciate the looking into it. Mike?
If there are no more discussion, I move to approve DPS hiring Egonics for the installation and the purchase of materials for 1 year for a total not exceeding $45,000.
I have motion, looking for support. Support. Support by Andrea. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, the other one is request to approve an annual subscription renewal for CityWorks Asset Management. That's like approving your QuickBooks update. You don't have a whole lot of choices in that matter.
That's
I think
impressive.
we kind of get it. I know that we had the opportunity to really get into the CityWorks with the SAW grant. We're very fortunate. The township has made a considerable investment on some additional equipment. We found it very useful. Having that monitor in the DPS department when folks come in and want to know where things are, it's spot on. We can find valves, we can do things that we weren't able to do before. Walk out there, the techs can literally go out with their cell phone now, and the cell phone will guide them right to where a shutoff valve or any kind of a structure could be that could be hidden. So it's an incredible time saver. And although there is a cost to it, as it is with any other software, it's the cost of doing business and operating that system. And this cost for this is $9,000, correct?
It's $9,000 a year. We paid for the first 2 years through the SAW grant. Through the SAW grant, we probably spent $50,000 actually GISing the system. This is an Esri product. We use this for, like you said, the everything from locating to work order management, asset management, getting the data in the hands of our operators. All of our as-built drawings, our asset layers in these. My guys out in the field can pull up a valve and, it's like my memo says, I can submit them a work order. Take down the caller information, we'll create the work order at the desk. The girls can send that work order out to an operator in the field. They can conduct the work. Any information that they need is right there. As an asset layer, as-built drawings, curb box reports, locations, anything. Complete that work, send it back to us. I review it, make sure our costs, we track all of our asset costs through the software. And we do all of this without ever having printed a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's true with the paperless version. Yeah.
We're simultaneously keeping our records, performing the work, tracking our costs, managing our assets, no paper.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate all the information and insight that you brought to us. And I know that there are different layers in that system, too, that can be used for different things that we can grow on as time goes by.
We started with it in DPW in Waterford not too long after I started over there. By the time I left, every department was using that software for something.
So the opportunities are there. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, I seen your request here, it says multiple years. How many years would you like?
Whatever you're comfortable with, and that is, there's no cost savings. It's $9,000 right now. In my opinion, this software is every bit as important as, our billing software, BSNA or Laserfish. This is really what's used. The county uses this, Waterford Township uses this, Independence Township. I mean, everyone in the area, most municipalities in the state are using this product. It's an Esri product. It's very robust.
So.
Two? Is
that what you said?
2 years?
Two? That sounds good. I'm just trying to, keep the workflow flowing and not waste your time.
I mean, it's
So,
been 2 years, so if
It's been
another
2 years. We spent 6 months building it.
Aaron, it says 9,000, but inevitably there'll may be an increase. So would
sure
you
of that.
feel comfortable if we, but not to exceed, like, say, 20,000?
for 2 years.
That was going to be my question too. It's you've shown me it in your office. It's extremely efficient, but I was just wondering the same thing. Will it go up?
I'm sure it will, but I don't think we're gonna, we're
Can't answer
going to
Yeah,
move
I know
away
it's
from
the
it.
unknown. So maybe just in small increments. Go a couple years. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd
or-
say 2 years and not to exceed $20,000.
They won't lock in a price for you for a certain number of years?
No, we did have that discussion through the SAW grant.
Shoot.
So we're trying to see if we can get
So,
a bonus
they're the
buy.
premier outfit in every
They know
government.
it.
Every government uses
And
CityWorks.
they know it, yeah.
So they kind of have a product that we want. I mean, we can get something similar and have had things that were similar in the past with Oakland County CAMs. Oakland County CAMs is also a CityWorks product.
This guy's got a hat that says city fund on it. on the
We were paying somewhere around $6,000 a year for CAMs for 4 years, and we got more done in 6 months than we did in 4 years. So It is a little more costly for us to do it on our own, but now we've got our own GIS equipment, so we're kind of saving that on the back end, and I don't foresee us going away from this, but, so.
Okay, so,
One more question. Any
Yes.
potential grants that you might know of in the future that you could seek out for it?
It's hard to know.
I know I'm kind of asking you a lot of unknowns, but I'm just curious.
I mean, we paid for 2 years of it up front with the SAW grant.
Mhm.
So it's possible that additional grants would come up in the future. I mean, we certainly would go after any grant that we think we would
Right.
qualify for. I've been pretty successful so far in getting grant money, so.
Mr. Lilly?
Did you want to make the motion?
I can make it, yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the request for the annual renewal of the asset management software for 2 years, to the tune of $20,000.
I'll support that. Motion support, all in favor?
Just
Whoop.
for clarification.
Yes.
You were up to $20,000?
To exceed.
Not to exceed
Up to
20,000.
Okay. Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Next item, item H. As we all know, we were here and we heard Plant Moran address our township board and the community. And as one of the highlights of their conversation was their recommendation to set up funds to start the funding process for the future of the township, some of the future projects that we have. And we've had different conversations and different sources. Some of it is money that the township's been very careful as what they spend and where they spend it. And we have other sources in particular. And this one was kind of an interesting source. And Mr. Roman, if you care to elaborate, I'd like you to do so.
Sure, Rick. So, annually, the three in-house officials, Terry, Rick, and I, we kind of review our general fund balance at the end of every year. And part of what we do is we try to come up with an amount that we actually want to label in our annual audited financial statement as assigned for capital improvements. So the three of us did that, and on our December 31st, 2018 statement, we actually assigned $5.5 million for capital projects. That's great to put a number down on paper. To me, as your township treasurer, I would kind of like to solidify that commitment. I'm not saying in one full swoop just to move the money, but if we can come up with some creative ways to start putting monies away, I think that's what I would like to do. And as Rick mentioned, during the most recent audit process, our auditors, Plant Moran, encouraged us to think about different ways to budget for and utilize funds to actually achieve our township's long-range capital goals. I hope as a board we all share that same goal of creating a new township hall on the land that we purchased on Elizabeth Lake Road. I always remember my father, who grew up during the Great Depression. One of the lessons he taught me was no matter how much money you're making, put some of it away and don't touch it. Just kind of let it build. And I think that same theory holds true with government. I wish more governments would do that. So as far as a mechanism, Plant Moran is on board using the Improvement Revolving Fund as a good way to actually put money away for our capital improvements. If this board or a future board goes out to our residents for a millage to construct a new township hall, I feel it's important to show our residents that we, as a responsible board, have done everything we can on our end to help pay for the project. In other words, spend conservatively today, put some savings away now. I just don't want us to be in a position where we have to go out to the public and ask for the whole thing. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Back in February of this year, you supported the movement of $100,000 of interest income over what was budgeted, so we put that into improvement revolving. So FYI, improvement revolving now has a little bit over $2 million in there, $2,088,000 as of the end of June. So today, I'm asking the board for permission to transfer our 2018 cable franchise revenue to the improvement revolving fund. There's a small portion that is restricted, but we could still move 509,349. I wouldn't ask the board to do that without first justifying our current reserves. So as of last year end, we've got $9.4 million sitting in our general fund. Assuming we wanted to keep a full year of general fund expenditures as reserves, we'd still have an excess of about $4.3 million. So thanks to previous boards, thanks to this board, we have spent conservatively, and I am extremely comfortable asking our board to move the unrestricted portion of cable to the improvement revolving fund.
And this money in this fund is not restricted. If for some reason we have an event, economic, something happens, we have the ability, this is not a restricted fund, to go back and bring that money back into the general fold. But again, this is, following advice and directions of our auditors of Plant Moran, and this is a reasonable and prudent, conservative action. And I support this in its entirety, and I would like to see this move forward. That's my opinion and endorsement.
Just FYI, I've talked to Chief Keller. He feels the same way about the police department. I'm actually looking into the legality of what millage money could be used to be shifted to an improvement revolving fund. I know Dan has been, as well as previous chiefs, have spent conservatively. Chief, I don't know if you want to elaborate or if I kind of hit on the...
Oh, you got a plan for the future, and this building it's old, and we need a new facility. We need a new civic center and a public safety building. And I, as along with Chief Adam Klein and Chief Harris, we have saved money for this event because we don't think I think the same way you do. We shouldn't have to put it all on the citizens when we could have been saving all the money which we have been. So I'm in the same mindset as you are.
Yeah, just because we take it in doesn't mean we have to spend it.
Yep.
What a novel idea. Okay? So, the taxes are set up, by the state of Michigan. Things are assessed via state law. The monies come in, we try to be careful with how it's spent. And I will say each and every department here, right across the board internally, I know Mr. Lilly guards this stuff with his life. I'll tell you that, and I appreciate that. And Mike's always trying to find creative ways, and it's always interesting to try different avenues. And I try to come up with money from wherever else I can come up with but the taxpayers on our side. So whenever grants we can get. So I think we're going down the right road, and I think it's very important that we commit to this, as we are asking and will be asking ultimately our residents to commit to this. So by demonstrating our fiscal responsibility, it's kind of like when you go to buy that first car, when you were younger, the payment was going to be X, but man, if you had, a couple grand to put down, all of a sudden the payment went to Y. Well, why not? So I believe that's what we should do as city leaders. We have that responsibility to our residents to follow through with that. Any other comments from the board?
No.
With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to transfer $509,349. Is that correct?
Correct.
To the improvement and revolving fund that will come from the transfer of cable fee revenues. That is a motion.
Or You're making the motion?
Yes.
Support.
I have motion, I have support from Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. We're trying to save our money, hopefully not for a rainy day. Okay, first reading of the Brendel Road rezoning. Mr. O'Neill.
Hi there.
I know you're having some technical difficulties, but is it going to work?
I think so.
Okay.
Got a new computer today in here, and the old one was like a three-legged dog, and this one is quite fast. It just had the USB for the mouse plugged into the wrong side. So, okay. Let me click on this here. So this project, or this rezoning, because no one can pronounce Paul's last name, we're calling the Paul K. rezoning, or the Brendel Road rezoning. If Paul's here, he might be able to help us with the pronunciation. But this property is described as 12-08-251-007, which is a vacant parcel located east of McKeechee Road and south of Brendel Road. It's approximately 78.8 acres. The request by Paul is to rezone this property from ag or agricultural to suburban farms. So you have, I'm grabbing the wrong mouse here. You have the application in front of you. You have all the information that was provided by the applicant and the reviews. You have the Planning Commission minutes. But in summary, on June 20th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing at which time they recommended approval of this rezoning to you. Let's scroll down here so we can kind of get an idea of what this looks like from the public hearing notice. So, Brendel Road runs along the north edge of this property. Some of you may recognize, I'm having issues. This as Ron and Mary Voorhees' house. These two parcels are the only ones that are currently zoned ag in this picture, basically. The rest is zoned suburban farms. That is what the master plan calls for in this area. And the proposal, the applicant in a case of a rezoning is asked to provide a concept for what they want to do. In this case, they believe that per the Land Division Act, they're able to make 12 or 13 lots. They show here in this layout, roughly, let's see, I'm having a hard time seeing this. So they're just north of 2 acres. We haven't really reviewed this yet. You've got to have net acreage of 2 acres. So these parcels may need to be a little bit larger, but as you can see, they've got several frontage parcels on Brendel, and then they would have to propose and be approved for and construct a private road to get further lots that would meet the ordinance requirements for lot frontage. And then parcel number 9 here at the bottom, it doesn't stand out real well, is going to be roughly 47 acres in size. So I think the owners are wanting to keep a large chunk for their own use, or future use perhaps. But again, this is consistent with what is around it. Acreage, I should say 2 acre zoning. So let me go back. One of the questions was traffic. There was a traffic impact analysis done by Johnson Anderson, Lee Merrill with Johnson Anderson is our traffic engineer, and his analysis of it was that it would only increase traffic trips, or I should say trips per day, by about 123 trips. So there's not much traffic on this road, just over 300 now. So it was a negligible increase. This is a very quiet part of town, so those who live in the area probably would notice an extra 120 cars going down the road, but again, it is consistent. So going back to, let me go back to this map here. Go back to the report. So again, the recommendation was for approval because after reviewing it, it was found that the requested suburban farms rezoning is consistent with the master plan and future land use map. 2, because rezoning the parcel to SF is compatible with the character of the surrounding area. 3, rezoning the parcel to SF will not result in spot zoning. And 4, the parcel is a reasonable module of land for single family development. So it's a pretty straightforward request. It's consistent and appropriate for all the reasons I just mentioned. Tonight is first reading, as is the case with rezonings. There are 2 readings necessary. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. And I see the applicant's engineer is in the audience, or I should say his design professional is in the audience, and Brad Thompson has done all the surveying and has provided a lot of the information from the applicant, and he, again, is behind us.
Okay.
That's all I have at the moment.
Fairly straightforward.
It is.
And inconsistent. It's consistent with what's the master plan, like you say, in the area. There's a lot of suburban farm around there. People do like that. And this is that continued growth that we see, and it's nice to see that they are 2-acre parcels instead of smaller residential.
Yes, and I should point out, and I don't want to alarm anyone, if they're going to do straight land divisions, the Land Division Act restricts them to the number of parcels they can take, and I don't pretend to know that equation. However, if they were to come in with a site plan, they could potentially develop this further. Now, there'd need to be a new traffic study. There need to be all kinds of other things that would apply, and I mentioned this to the Planning Commission. They give us a concept of what they intend to do, and they've said that this is all they intend to do, but they're not legally restricted to this, like they would be in a PD or a PB situation where rezoning attaches to a specific site plan. So if this is rezoned, they are just required to provide at least 2 acres of net area for each lot they create, and then meet all the other standards of the ordinance. So it may not be exactly what's there, or it may be something completely
Some
different.
version of it,
Correct.
but nonetheless, a 2-acre suburban farm type product.
Correct. And that's just not White Lake. That's everywhere. I mean, they do have some flexibility. So.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Lilly?
Sean, isn't there, by parcels 1 and 2, isn't there a large hill that basically front those 2 parcels, and then as you go over the hill, it's a downgrade from there, quite steep,
Let me look here.
the road itself?
Right here.
What's that? Is it pretty level all the way through there?
Well, here it is.
I think in the back, I think there's some topography back here.
That takes off.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of wetland here, and it's pretty obvious that
I'm talking about on the frontage.
You're talking up here.
Yeah.
Let me go down here to this layout. You're saying parcels 1 and 2 here.
Yeah. Doesn't that road kind of crest right there?
I think
Pretty
the high
straight.
isn't the high
Straight,
spot
yeah.
more centered? It might be further down.
To the right.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
it's roughly here.
Move
Further
over a
on
little.
down.
You think
Right
further
just
here?
before my parents' property line.
Right there.
Yep.
Okay, so you're thinking right where the road might be
Yeah,
coming
that's
in.
more
That's
realistic.
the high spot.
Just concerned about the driveways all going out there, if that is happen to be a hill right there, that
Actually, where all these parcels are, it's all real level. And
it's all level?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, every bit.
Any driveway permit would have to be approved by the road commission to make sure that there's.
I was just thinking if that road made a large hill right there, that these driveways are gonna come out on a hill or something, that maybe we should consider a drive like we did off Cooley Lake Road there, that would actually have a driveway that would go across those 5 parcels on the frontage, so that they were actually not individual driveways out there, but do that.
Almost kind of a loop that
I
would-
remember a hill there, but I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly where it was. So.
The road commission, that's one thing I can mention. Well, and I think you just did mention it to them. I mean, that's something they're going to need to talk to the road commission about, because they're not going to want an unsafe situation. I mean, there's not a lot of traffic, but at the same time, it's a pretty dark stretch of road at night. There aren't lights out there. It's a gravel road.
I just remember on Cooley Lake Road, that's what we did, just off of Bogey, that there was several residential units there that we put a common driveway and granted them some additional variances to take up that they may be an alternative if there is a site distance
Sure.
or something.
Sure.
Okay. Almost.
Okay. Mr. Powell?
We're not being asked tonight to approve the splits, right? Just the rezoning request.
Correct. The reason I brought that up was just because in the application we asked them to give us a concept of what they intend to do, and most people have an idea when they purchase property of what they may want to do with it, and this was his. And so he asked Mr. Thompson to put together a survey, because I think he does intend to move, probably before the end of this year, according to him, move forward with splits. So I was just sharing that information because it was really kind of a part of his request.
Now, I'm not a fan of lots being taken off of the main roadway. as Terry indicated, there's always a better way to do that, take the drive-in off of the main roadway and then have the driveways coming off of that internal roadway. And I didn't know, I see you have 10 splits, Brad, proposed on the, it's just one piece of property, right? It's one parcel right now, correct?
It's one 78-acre parcel.
So you're allowed the 10 parcels with the bonus because you're putting a private road in?
We are allowed the bonus, not because of the private road, but because we're keeping one parcel at 60% of the original size. That's the purpose behind the large remaining parcel. We have 4 or 5 parcels that are fronting on the road, and that removes the opportunity for us to get the 2 bonus divisions. that
Okay,
way.
I see.
So the way we're getting it is by keeping the balance as 60% of the original size. And to respond to Mr. Lilly, if I could, the location of the road access is at the high point of the hill, as I believe Mr. Ruggles mentioned, and Mr. Gordon's mentioned. And the purpose there, all those other parcels will front on the private road, rather than out onto Brendel Road. So just the 5 parcels to the west will be having direct access to Brendel Road, and all of those have driveways right across the street from them. That are at that location, and those are relatively flat in that area. And the purpose was to keep those driveways far away from that hill because they can't obtain site distance over the top of that hill. It's too sharp.
And actually, to the west of that, there's a lot of houses with driveways that be identical to what he's proposing.
So the only other question that I had was to extend that private road, what's the length of that private road being proposed now?
That private road is probably 1,000 feet at the most.
Okay, all right, and then to extend it then into in the future into the 47 acres, there's gonna have to be other provisions, because you're gonna extend that private road a little bit too far if you don't have a secondary access somewhere.
That is correct, and that was discussed with the owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And an emergency turnaround, a midpoint turnaround.
Oh, halfway back on the 1,000-foot roadway, you mean?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, and we haven't analyzed the private road application yet, but there is a maximum length of a cul-de-sac without a turnaround too. You know, at least a hammerhead off the side or something.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. I would like to make a motion to move this along to the second reading for rezoning of Brendel Road property. Looking for support. Support. I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Moving it along.
Good to see you, Brad.
Nice to see you, Brian.
Will do. We do every day.
Good to be seen, right?
Yeah, good to be seen.
Next item is kind of an interesting item. It's a request to approve quiet title action for property in Suburban Knolls subdivision. And essentially what has happened is that we have had our Suburban Wells pump station located on that property since that subdivision was developed in 58. And upon that time, that was a private well system that was put in for that development. Time went forward. Township started to develop its water system. Water system absorbed that pump house into its system. Time moved forward again. We've modernized our system. That particular well house has now become inadequate, has been decommissioned by order of the DEQ, and needs to be, the wells need to be capped and the buildings removed and returned to a natural state. The interesting thing is that way back when, we didn't have Lisa. So it didn't get caught, and title was never, deed was never transferred to the township, and many of the entities that were involved in that are out of business.
All of them.
gone to the grave and just dissipated into thin air. So in order to keep it right and keep it legal, we need to go to court to file an action, which in a sense is a lawsuit, to have a judge render us title. And that will then allow us to legally go through the process of reclaiming the property and then ultimately probably putting it on the market to recover a little bit of cost. And that's really all this is. Yes.
Just to add just a little something, I mean, Aaron did his due diligence on this. We got a title search on it. We've reached out to anybody and anybody who we can. There is nobody to contact. There is no association. And we believe, based on the historical files that Aaron was able to locate, there are agreements in there. It was clearly the intent to convey that property to the township, that whole lot. Unfortunately, despite the clear intent, it doesn't appear that it actually happened because we can't find a fully executed agreement.
So, moving on. Mr. Roman.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with a quiet title action on the property located in suburban Knowles where the well house sits.
I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support.
I have a question. Do we have an approximate budget for something like this?
Not really.
$500.
$500 and 10 years of delays.
Yeah.
$4.99.
I mean, I could tell you generally a quiet title action, no one's going to contest it.
Right.
So it's a matter of preparing the complaint, filing it, appearing in court, and it depends on the judge that we draw on how many appearances they're going to require, what type of notice they're going to require.
So is it $2,000 or $10,000?
I don't think you'll get a circuit court action for $2,000. I think $10,000 is too high.
Okay.
I mean, we have to do it. We really don't have a lot of choice.
Well, if we're only going to get a $500 for the property, then it doesn't make sense to do it.
No,
So that's
but
why
we
I was asking.
technically, legally, we could be challenged if we decided to tear the buildings down.
Yeah, the problem is that the state expects us to abandon the wells that are not in service on that property. We have tried to reach out, as Mr. Powell had requested, to the association to see if they wanted to adopt this. Found that no association exists or appears to have ever existed. Then that led to the search for the documentation.
Oh, sure.
We found all the documentation all the way up to the title. And now it turns out possibly the title company is not even in business. So it seems like it's going to be a slam dunk, but you never know. But we want to abandon those wells and demo that site so that we don't have to maintain it anymore. And we'd like to sell that property to try to recoup some of that cost. We know it's going to be a capital expense for us to liquidate this out of our water system. The site is 100% dilapidated. It's well past its prime. It would be required, basically a demo and rebuild if we tried to put it back in service, and the wells are.
Under a devil's advocate here, if we didn't do anything, we just say, we're not going to do anything, DEQ, it's yours. So somebody would have to sue us and claim that we're responsible, but it would be going to court, and we're now, so they'd have to prove that we're responsible.
And we'd have to defend that.
And we'd have to defend it. But we could be talking.
Honestly, I think they'd win.
We could be talking $10,000 per well to abandon the wells, plus the lawsuit, just trying to get a handle. If it's going to cost us $40,000 to quiet the title and to take care of the wells, maybe we just walk away and let the state take it over.
No, I
Well,
don't.
the problem is that with those wells there, if that process takes 20 years, those wells are essentially a straw going directly down into the water source that we use for our public drinking water.
I'm right with you.
It's a having a dilapidated well that's not properly abandoned is dangerous to a groundwater community, as you know. So we don't want to leave these to nature.
Yeah,
And-
the question just needed to be asked, that's all.
And, I expected and budgeted a couple years ago when we talked about this the first time when I brought it to the board to ask for the authority to demo it. We expected the project to cost somewhere around $100,000. We're not going to recoup $100,000 from this property, so we know it's going to be a cost to us. But I feel like we need to do it, and the sooner the better. Now, going forward, I think we also need to consider, it's an eyesore. The building is old. It's been maintained up until we could not afford to maintain it anymore. Both wells are now broken down and completely inoperable. The hydro tank is completely inoperable. So rehabbing the station and putting it back online, I think, would be a greater cost than demoing it at this point. I did get a quote from Peerless, our well contractor, for the demo. It's a couple of years old now, but I believe that was wanting to say somewhere under $6,000 a piece.
That's pulling the wells or just grouting?
Pulling
wells? Pulling the
the
casings?
pumps and grouting the casings.
Okay.
Actually, I have it right here if you want to give me 2 seconds.
No, that's all right. We're
Okay,
involved.
Counselor?
Just, I understand and appreciate your concern. I have no problem in my monthly updates to include something to the effect of the cost, and you can evaluate at that time whether you want to move forward.
I think we have to move forward.
We have to.
Okay.
But I had to ask the question, as you know, many of our lawsuits have gone on for years and years and years, and we might have done things differently if we had known what the cost was going to be. So, okay.
Okay, that being said, I have a
Motion?
motion,
I don't know. if
There was a support. There was support.
Yeah, support.
Right here.
support. Okay, there was motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, next item, trustee comments. Mr. Ruggles.
Oh, yeah, well, sorry to run out on you guys last month.
Congratulations.
So, left here, got to the hospital at 8:30, and my wife gave birth around 11:15, so.
What was the date? Remind me.
On the 18th. Yeah. So
I
it's,
said he's got a good story, right?
it's been exactly a month. He's a month old, so yeah, 7.5 pounds, it was great, everything was fine, so. It's been busy at my house. Sorry I haven't seen you guys, I've been tied up, but.
Sure, it's a busy place right now.
Yep, so it's great. Other than that, planning commission meets in 2 days. I'll be there. Missed the meeting last month. Sorry.
You had a decent excuse.
So, oh yeah, and his name's Brooks. Brooks Orvis. Yeah, in case you're curious. So. That's my news. Thanks. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Voorhees.
Apparently, there was a special board meeting I held April 28th of 1913 for the purpose of voting on the question of granting a franchise to the Eastern Michigan Edison Company, granting to said company permission to erect, construct, lay, operate, and maintain within the Township of White Lake all the needful and proper poles, towers, mains, wires, pipes, conduits, and other apparatus required for the transmission and distribution of electricity for the public and private use. However, it was subject to all conditions and restrictions of said franchise, and that was passed at the Township Board meeting on the 21st day of March 1913. As we all know, my goal is to come up with some weird trivia, and I'd like to thank Barb, Allison for helping me, support me with all these little trivia things that she sends me. And also, last Saturday was our favorite township former clerks and trustees' birthday. So we all needed to, at the same time, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to Carol Burkhart. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Carol. I'm all set.
Ms. Smith.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Scott. I'm so glad to hear that baby and mom are healthy, and that's wonderful. So congratulations. The next library board meeting is Wednesday, July 24th at 6:45 at the new library, of course. I want to announce that over 1,500 library users have signed up for the summer reading program, so that's wonderful. And you can still sign up. It's going on, and there'll be the end of the summer reading program party sometime in August, and look forward to that. It's always lots of fun. We just participated, most of us, in the police team golf outing. So I want to thank Officer Keidel, Chief, Jean and all the volunteers that made that happen. It was a wonderful event, and of course want to thank my husband. He's shameless plug here. He sponsors and he organized 16 teams, so thank you very much for that. And I want to encourage you to please join the police department on August 3rd from 11 to 3 o'clock at White Lake Kroger's for Zero Hunger Emergency Food Drive. Please bring non-perishable food items, and I believe they're filling a patrol car, right? Yeah. So August 3rd from 11 to 3, White Lake Kroger's, non-perishable food items, please. And then I just want to address the residents that spoke at public comment this evening. Unfortunately, the format does not allow me or any of us to engage with you, and I'm sorry, but I do want you to know that I hear you, I do work for you, I am here to serve you, and sometimes information doesn't get shared. So if you could email me directly, our emails are all on the website, or please CC me on any emails that you're sending to our department. I would like to help you out and be involved, and so I just want you to know that I do care. I am here to work for you. I do hear you, sir, so please contact me. Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments tonight.
Mr. Lilly.
Thanks. A couple of items, and I want to address a couple items that were talked about tonight, also at the public comment. One was the sewer issue at Pinecrest, and I have a hard time trying to understand that the people of Pinecrest made a legitimate offer to the township that they were interested in a special assessment district to put in sewers on particularly Pinecrest. And I don't know why that we do not have the ability to simply listen to what their request is and to be able to respond to their request, not only on an amount of money, but to explain to those people that your cost is so high because that main that has to be put in has to be done according to the township master plan. This isn't just simply putting an 1.5-inch line in or whatever, like sometimes does happen. This is doing that, and here's the cost. Now, where do you want to go from here? Obviously, alternative is where you want to go from here is try to include additional whatever. That obviously takes time. But I hear people are complaining that they have some serious issues at the present time, and I think we need to respond better to them. The other issue, Ron's Market. I read the dangerous building hearing officers issues on all of, I think there was 5 different properties that we were talking about, and for the life of me, I don't know why we do the dangerous building hearings 2 and 3 times on the same property with the same answer for the hearing officer to simply say, I'm going to give you more time. Now, I can understand the hearing officer saying that these are the deficiencies and let this board make a determination whether we're going to give them more time or not. Some of these are really ridiculous, and Ron's Market is particularly one. We all know that she bought that property for the liquor license, but we've got neighbors here that are continually asking this board, where do we stand, what we're doing, and nothing is happening over there. Aspen Meadows, Rick, I think you ought to direct the ordinance officer tomorrow morning to get up there and do whatever has to be done to clean up this thing and have a report back to this board by the next meeting to address those issues and hopefully address some that they've been taken care of. The last item I have is, and I mentioned to you before, there's currently a parcel on Elizabeth Lake Road, right by Oxbow Lake Road, that they tore down a house. The parcel is very shallow, and they now have it advertised as 3 parcels. Now we're going to be, I assume in a short period of time, consideration of putting a roundabout at Oxbow, and there's not enough room to put in 3 driveways that are going to accommodate cars on a parcel that had 1 home on it, particularly because of the shallowness. And I think directing staff, whether Sean be you and building department, whatever, that this needs to be addressed by the real estate company before they start selling parcels there, and whatever, it should be on at least record notifying them that they're gonna have to submit site plans or something to show that they have sufficient parking and access and ingress and egress out of those parcels to do that before we end up in a mess on those. So those are my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As the board knows that I'm a major fan of extending sanitary sewers, and I would like to offer my services, Aaron, to meet with those homeowners and see if we can't move a little bit speedier on that. Even if it takes a motion from this board to initiate a special assessment district in order to get it started. I was almost ready to make a motion tonight to authorize Spalding oh my lord, J&A to start designing the sanitary sewer for that street so we could initiate a little bit faster turnaround on that.
I'll call you tomorrow.
I'd appreciate that.
There's a lot of history here.
We have.
I'm sure there is, and I've done, as you guys
That was
well
one
imagine,
side of a two-sided story.
I've done a number of
there's a
engineered
lot
septic
going on
systems in there, and certainly it'd be nice to have a sewer going in the ground instead of people building septic fields.
And we agree.
And the issue regarding the gravel roads on Pontiac Lake Road there, I just wondered whether or not, Mr. Supervisor, if you reached out to the road commission.
Yes, I have. I have some news, and I'll share it.
But I've personally used asphalt millings, and there are millings all over the place. The county is obtaining, and by the milling up of their county roads, by putting a 2 to 4 inch layer of asphalt millings on gravel roads, it totally eliminates dust. There is no dust. And that's a free product that the road commission's paid for already, and if that were put down instead of gravel that creates dust, that might be an alternative, and I'd be interested in knowing what their position is on that. I would think that the lots in Aspen Meadows, we should be able to deal with that normally. Somebody owns that lot, we go out and clean it up, and we tax that lot, or we lien that lot if necessary, because I think that's very important. 1 week after Brooks was born, my 8th grandchild was born as well, Adeline, in Denver, and so I'm leaving on Friday to go see her for the first time.
Another vacation.
No, this is a legitimate. No, another vacation. That's correct. You sound like my staff. And so that's really cool, and so I'm enjoying you as well. And then this past Sunday, and the chief and the fire chief would appreciate this, I've been through the Citizens Academy and enjoyed learning what I did. We had the ability of offering my mother-in-law's home to the fire department for educational purposes and for training purposes. And so for the past year they've been training in it, and then Sunday they did a controlled burn. It was very interesting watching the fire department in their professionalism use the equipment that we authorized tonight to be purchased here by for our fire department. And so I've got a healthy respect for the professionals, the police and fire here in this township. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Very good. Mr. Roman.
I just want to thank our residents for attending the board meeting tonight, and to those that are watching live stream, thanks for staying in touch with us.
Mr. Supervisor, I forgot one thing. I just wanted to make sure that we all wished Brent Bonvier well as he retired. His last day was Friday, so I don't know if anyone knows that, but he retired from the building department, so I just want to wish Brent well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, first of all, we did have a great golf outing, and again, Chief, that was a great job out there, and we really had a great show of the public and all the sponsors and everyone that was involved. And all the poor people that we harassed to buy tickets, and some of them who bought more than others, we certainly don't apologize for it.
Hey, I won this. I won lots of great stuff.
So that was a very, very good thing that we did there. The sewer issue, Pinecrest, I won't get into that, but we are proponents of this. But we do have a responsibility to look at things in a greater scope. It is a responsibility that we have and we have to look at that first. And right now, things do take a little longer to turn around. We've had almost any industry that we're touching right now, anything related to construction, is extremely difficult to get turnaround time in as timely a manner as sometimes you would like it to happen. It's extremely difficult. Try to hire a plumber, see what happens. So there are difficulties there. I still believe that we need to, as a community, keep looking forward, and mechanisms that we have here to put in place to save our money and to reserve our money so that we can have a lesser impact on the public when the time comes. I think that is something that we need to make almost like an absolute goal. And it's kind of like, like I said, saving for the first car, trying to be as responsive as we can. It would be nice to go to the public for a significantly less amount of millage dollars than what the project's going to cost, and move forward with that. The community here as a whole has been extremely positive on this development. I talk to people, and people are excited about it. They want to see the next steps take place. What is it we're doing? Where are we going? We are looking at a myriad of things, and I've recently had a conversation, Mr. Lilly and I, with another potential avenue that, as we get more information and study it a little bit further, we'll bring it out. But we're looking at all the different avenues that we can so that we can minimize the economic cost to the community, because not only is there the cost of the building, but as you know, there's the cost of maintaining that building from now to time comes. So the next thing is that I want everyone to shop local, okay? And I know it's a simple thing, but every time you shop in our community, you help bolster our community, and you keep the jobs here, and you create the economic opportunity that helps us as a city be viable. M59 is our economic lifeline in one respect. And when we can develop it in such a manner that it suits the needs of the community, the residents, and try to future-proof it, and you've heard me use that term before, as much as possible for the next downturn, which we will have, we're in much better shape. So, when you think about it, shop local every time. It's important. You really need to do that. We've got a lot of businesses out there that really will bend over backwards for residents, and it's a difference of your community shining or not. So I highly recommend it. So with that, I say good night, God bless, and we are going to go into executive session. So I'm looking for approval to recess into closed session to consider attorney-client privileges and communication with accordance with MCL 15.268H. Roll call vote.
But you made a motion, it hasn't been seconded.
I need a motion.
I supported it, you just didn't hear me.
Okay.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Henry Boyce?
Yes.
And thank you, everyone, and good night for the moment, and we will go into my office.
We are going to